Nothing special tonight. Um, Blanket, pillow, block, anything that you find helpful is nice to have available. In fact, one of the themes that as I was doing this, you all know this already, but it's good to remind ourselves sometimes that yin is should be the most non-competitive thing we do all day. Absolutely no reason we have to look like anybody else or go deeper, deeper, or look any certain way. It really is just about stimulating, kind of freeing points of the body, and we're all different. You can go do this along with me if you want. It just happens to be something I was demonstrated this week as somebody was assessing me in an online class. If you sit with your legs forward, for example, and you purposely try to pull your toes towards the floor, like this strong turnout position. There's no muscle involved here, and there's really no inhibitions of tendons or fascia or anything like that. This ability to turn out is strictly bone, strictly the way our femur, in fact, the feet are just a lever for turning the femur. And that all has to do with these many variations of the way our hips flare or don't flare or have protuberances or thickness in the socket. So I could practice this move for the rest of my life and I would never get my toes to the ground. Some people, their feet naturally fall to the ground. And that's just an illustration of how different we are. Remind us for yin, we're just respecting our bones that are put together in our own little unique way. Turns out my internal rotation, which is this other rotation, toes coming together, I'm like in the bottom 20 percentile of the population being able to do that. My hips just don't, my bones literally don't turn in. So a lot of what we're doing to stimulate, release fascia, stretch our muscles, it's all good in letting energy flow through our joints, making us feel better, hopefully, than we did before. But there's actually absolutely no reason to look any particular way. So the whole challenge of yin is just to find something in our own unique bodies that stimulates the target area. So my role as leading the class is just to tell you where the target area is, sort of show you a way to get to that target area, and then you have to kind of work around what your bones are going to allow. Never should be any pain, and never should be competition with yourself. Zoom makes it nice in that we're not competing with each other. We can barely, we don't see each other, but just keep that in mind tonight, that it's all about getting into the shape and the target area and releasing, letting that energy flow through that area. Not too much, but of course we want to feel something, but not worrying about how we look or striving to be in a certain way. So we'll get right to it. I would say it's quite a bit of hip and spine. So you might just come to whatever feels good in kind of a child pose. Just do what feels good to your body. Just stretch your arms out, wiggle your hips. See where you're tight in the shoulders. Send a little love there before we get into the the actual poses. And the poses tonight kind of link together, especially in the first part of this. We're going to work the right side of the body for a while, pose to pose. So don't try to keep up. If you need a little bit extra time to find a variation, I'll walk up to the screen and try to help. Also, you may just need to turn around and look for a prop to help yourself ease to it. So when you're ready, we're going to start in what we call a dragon pose. Just bring your right leg forward. The whole point here is about the back leg. So the front leg's just kind of a stand for our torso. We really just want to relieve this hip flexor area, this part that gets very tight, especially if we sit. And that's just a matter of getting that knee further and further back. So your shape might be quite high up. You might enjoy sinking down. Since it's a 3-minute hold, just find something that feels supported for your body, that stimulates that back hip flexor. And once you find it, kind of keep assessing it. Both hands can be inside that front leg, maybe for part of it. Just helps you get lower, but if the hands around the leg gives you a good stretch, the knees down. I hope I said that. Yeah, these dragons are always knee down, back knee down, front leg forward. Because there's no weight on that knee, the knee can be kind of more forward than we would do in a normal yoga pose. Not going to hurt your knee. So you're just spreading those knees away from each other, looking for that nice Goldilocks, not too much, not too little. And then you're just settling into the breath, trying to let it go of all the worries of the day. And again, that front knee, sometimes I like to flare it out. I almost actually come out to the outside of my foot. It just helps me get a little bit different angle into that back hip flexor. So you're playing around, trying to find that good sweet spot, which may change as we stay in the pose for 3 minutes. So there you are. Very nice, Chris. That's exactly the way I like to do it, kind of this little open wing dragon, I call it, with the hip kind of going out. You don't have to hold it in the same orientation the whole time. It's a lot of yin is working with chi, energy flow in the body. So once you've kind of maximally stimulated and released, a little bit of change will set up a new channel to open. So don't be afraid to change the pose after a minute, minute and a half. We got about 10 more seconds, so time to kind of find breath to ease out of it. We're actually going to go right into swan, pigeon, which just means we're walking that bent front leg to the other side of the mat. And our target area here is still that back leg more than anything. Although some of us feel it on the side of the hip of the front leg. Try to center your hips as much as your body will allow. Again, a lot of that has to do with your own hip socket. Your hips may never be totally flat and parallel. Doesn't matter. You're just going to, again, try to find a way to support yourself on your hands, on your forearms, or really let go, sleep the swan. If you can get your forehead down, might take you a while to sink that deeply. Sleeping swan for 3 minutes. Strong external hip rotation on the front hip. Still getting release in the back hip flexor. And depending on the orientation of your spine, also releasing tension in the spine, especially if you feel a little bit of round. You can let your neck go. Very calming, this face down swan. You probably figured it out. Leslie's using a block. Sometimes a pillow can let you come lower without much pressure on your elbows. That's another option. By being up a little in pigeon, sometimes you can let the head hang too and get a little stretch in the back of the neck. Few more seconds here, so I like to take the last few breaths to either sink more deeply and let go a couple more inches wherever you are. Maybe just change the orientation of the torso or the hips. Give yourself a little bit of new sensation. Just see where that takes you. We'll take a couple of breaths to come out. Easiest, safest way to come out is to just roll on to that right hip, the hip with the bent leg in front, and let that back leg, left leg come forward. Take your time. It's never a rush in these transitions. Each shape demands something else. One shape might be super easy for you, the next isn't. What we're going to do is we're going to leave that leg that was bent, this time bent into the side of the thigh. Other leg that was back is straight out. We're just going to forward bend over that leg. And the forward bend, we like to get our breastbone sort of over that leg so it is actually, especially for people like me a little twist to make that happen. If I were to just go forward, I'd be in the center of the V. I have to walk my way around. See if you can get the body straight over that leg. Work yourself into the forward bend. And there's lots to play with here. It's both a back stretch and a hamstring back of the leg stretch, but you can play with how much it is. If I soften my knee, pull my back, get a little bit more into the back. If I can straighten my knee, I might have to let the back be up a little bit. So you're trying to kind of find that sweet spot between those points of tension. And we'll just sink into the pose for a couple of minutes. Since yin is trying to stimulate and stretch tissue, a lot of what we learn as we work with our bodies is where a good hold is. If you're very, very lucky, you can hold onto your foot, which is a wonderful holder, but it's not necessary. You may have to have a softer hold, just kind of holding the shin a little bit. As long as you're feeling release in the back, the leg, the hip, you're doing your perfect stretch. And sometimes you can't necessarily do all equally. You might give part of the time in the pose more to the back. Then maybe switch over to focusing on the leg. So it looks like you're doing nothing, but you're making these little minor adjustments, finding what's tight and letting it release. And if you're very, very open, sometimes that takes a little bit of thought, because we don't want you just sleeping on your knee. We want you body scanning and finding those areas and seeing what shape produces that effective stretch. It is a funny kind of thing that the more open people are, very open people actually have to work quite hard to get the same benefit. That the rest of us get just by sort of thinking about that shape and getting into it. Okay, that's 3 minutes. So we give ourselves some breaths to just let the spine ease its way up. And we're just going to take this bent leg, right leg. First, just let the knee come vertical. We're actually going to go into a half saddle. So there's a few red flags for this pose, and all of your experience you probably already know. The saddle is the one where we bring the heel to the buttocks. So one of the flag areas is the knee. You actually have to find a place, might be knees very close together, might be knees further apart, that doesn't put undue strain on the inside of that knee. It may also be that you just have to lean away from that knee a little bit. Some people really struggle with their feet here. So I usually wrap my foot back behind my buttocks. Some people are better off leaving some space in that bent knee and flaring their foot open. So you have to play with that too. And then you want it to stretch this quad area, although it's already stimulating the hip. And that's just a matter of leaning back. That quad on that right leg is getting long. Some of you will be able to lay all the way back and just take the pose, letting that quad sort of ease its way down. Others of you have plenty in an upright back. Just gently letting that knee ease to the ground. You'll know where that is. And isn't it funny? I see people who are like totally reclined with that quad stretch who weren't necessarily that stretched out in the hamstring. It's just another example of how unique our bodies are. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It just means you're going to be less into the pose in your tight areas. I wish I were with you. Sometimes I can help find some cushioning for those uncomfortable areas. Yeah, blanket or pillow behind you. Sometimes just the ticket. Sometimes, especially if you have any knee issues, rolling kind of to the side. Like, Andrea, you're doing it naturally. That's good. You know, just not putting too much, not asking too much of that hip rotator and knee. Otherwise, there you are. Sinking in and feeling those tight areas release little by little over time, to the extent that your bones allow. Since there's lots of joints being stressed here, be sure and give yourself plenty of time to come out of this pose. So I usually kind of roll away from the bent leg so I can release the foot. Let that leg gradually straighten itself out. So that same working leg is going to be the top leg in what we call double pigeon. So this time we're sitting forward and we're trying to stack knee over foot, foot over knee in this little shape. And again, depending on the bones, that may not be possible. So you're opening the pose or loosening the pose, maybe putting the leg more forward to still get that outward rotation of the hip. and we're going to take it into a forward bend, but you decide whether you want to go straight into the forward bend. My hips are tight enough that I usually breathe myself down in kind of stages, starting with just kind of almost a straight spine, letting those hips come to their edge, and then just gradually, maybe a midpoint, kind of holding myself a little bit halfway down. Some of you know exactly where you want to go, and you're just all the way forward, forehead to floor. Wherever that is for you. Again, a block, pillow, or you can just use your hands, whatever works, to let this be about this external rotation of the hips. And in the forward bend, we're also getting a spinal release. A little bit asymmetrical because of the shape of the legs, so a little bit more on one side than the other is very normal, very natural. We'll do both sides, so. Yes, it's also possible to just turn it into a half double pigeon. If both knees bent, it's just asking too much. So we all feel these things so differently. I can't really know what any person is feeling. Some people, the stimulation of the deep tissue almost feels like a warmth, like you're building a little heat in very specific areas. For me, I actually feel it almost like a circulation. It feels like something's moving there. Very sweet feeling of things moving around, which I probably have invented because of the image of chi circulating in the body. It should never feel like pain. It should never feel like you really want to run away from that sensation. It should feel like, oh, isn't that nice? I haven't felt that for a while, and that area seems to be enjoying this stimulation. Oh, I hope I didn't leave you too long. Go ahead and come on up. And we're gonna switch to doing the other side. So we're just gonna give ourselves a little minute to let those working hips and legs stretch out and do whatever feels good. Sometimes just a little movement. Helps bring everything back to a good sense. You will have after effects of feeling. You know, this hip, I can tell, just got stretched. Those feelings that can feel sort of vulnerable in some people are actually a sign that you're working effectively. So we just do it all on the other side. Start with the dragon. This time the left leg's gonna come forward as our support, and we work that right knee back. With the toe, you can kind of scooch it back, or conversely, you can just dip the hips and torso more forward to find that stretch point. And then just sink into the dragon. If you're on your thigh and you think you can go further, what you want to do is bring both hands inside the leg. That's going to help you release deeper, maybe to the forearms or play with it. So by stringing these poses together kind of all on one side, getting a lot of work on that one side. We move through the poses. Hopefully nobody's feeling too much downward pressure in the back knee. There's a couple of tricks to that. One is to have a blanket under it, but the main thing you can do is push forward, yes, so that the top of the knee is taking the pressure, not the patella of the kneecap. You want to actually be forward of that back knee if you can. And I think I mentioned this in Dragon before. It's very simple to change the orientation of the torso, maybe letting one hip sink down, almost twisting the spine a little bit, maybe going closer towards the leg or further away. So if you come to a place in the hold where you've kind of lost that deep sensation that's talking to you, just move an inch or two in another direction and it usually will come back. Sort of want to be feeling something. Even though it looks like we're doing nothing, we're getting however we interpret that deep stimulation in the target area. Stay attuned to whether that sensation is getting stronger, which usually means you need to back up a little bit. But if it goes away, you want to bring it back. So give yourself plenty of time, a couple breaths to transition into pigeon, into swan. Usually you just come up a little bit so you can re-support yourself on your hands. One way is to heel toe yourself so that front leg is more, the shin is more perpendicular to the top of the mat. Yours may be much more angled, mine is. And then you just roll those hips. You'll find it where as the hips begin to center, you're increasing the straight on stretch of that hip flexor of the back leg. Once you think you've found a good orientation, just sink into it. Forward onto the elbows, forehead to the ground on a pillow. whatever keeps that sweet kind of stretchy, moving stuff around sensation in the target area. And sometimes we focus on our breath in these poses, which is really nice. Something I like to do, and it can feel very meditative. But you can just use the body sensation, the target sensation, as its own point of concentration. Just watch it. Internally feel what it's doing. That way you adjust it. If it gets too strong or goes away, you just bring it back with very subtle movement. And we'll take some breaths to just think about slowly releasing the effort of the pose. Kind of walking yourself up. Our next one is that half saddle. So if you fall onto that left hip, you're going to eventually want that back leg to be your forward leg. I'm sorry, the Janu Sirsasana. Go ahead and bring that back leg forward. That bent leg stays bent in towards the inside of your thigh. Take your time. Yep. Nice. Yeah, a prop under the knee, if the hip doesn't open real well, sometimes we don't really care about that one too much. It's more about this front leg. So you can prop that up or change its position to not be too strong, and then rotate the torso till your breastbone is trying to find the center of that leg, and just let the body sink forward over that leg. For some people, this is a super, super nice hamstring stretch. For a lot of us, it's more of a back stretch. A little bit of an asymmetrical twist in the spine. Breathing into the ribs. And just letting those vertebrae open up in the back. The leg stretch is sort of like, oh, that's nice too. So the shape of the back is really going to depend on mostly the mobility in the hips. Some of you will be like almost flat spine along that leg. Most of us have some degree of bend in the back. And I kind of consider that the primary purpose of this pose. Your back is very supple. You can kind of wiggle yourself, stretch the spine along that leg, and it becomes a little bit more of a leg stretch. But don't be afraid to just let it stay in the back. And by the back, I mean the full back. So your back of your head will get a release. The pelvis will tilt, sort of stimulate that whole pelvic region, the low back. Even though we're using the arms as a lever to hold that shape, we don't want to stiffen the shoulders. So just check once in a while, make sure you're not overusing the shoulders. You don't want to be aggressive. Let the shoulders sort of release in their sockets too. Okay, and just think about coming up super slow motion, kind of help yourself. No, don't want to work those back muscles strongly after that deep, deep, deep stretch. And then the next one's that half saddle. So that bent leg is going to try to find that other heel back towards the buttocks position. Knee tries to be in. I mean, the classic pose, the knees are kind of touching. Most of us have a little V in our hips by the time we can find a good sit bone stretch. And then this time we're leaning back, reclining back till we feel that target area in the quadriceps at the front of the leg without any undue stress on the knee or any of those poor little ankle bones that are getting put in a position we're not in all the time. Be kind to them too. Most of us can find something. Some days just barely putting my leg back is a super deep quad stretch. If you can recline, the more you recline, the more you also get a little bit of a back bend, which is a nice counterpose to the forward bend we just did. But let's worry about the quad first. Let it be. Send it some love. Let it hang out there. Every once in a while you will hear a yoga teacher tell you that you need to put your knee on the floor in this position. I think that can be dangerous. If your knee can float and you feel it in your quadriceps, you're doing just fine. No reason to force that joint any deeper than it needs to go. Give yourself plenty of time and several deep breaths to roll away from that deep quad. Yep. And just come up. Yep. And then the next pose is that stack double pigeon. So that leg's going to try to stack foot over knee, knee over foot. Again, some people are very open, their bones, they can be flush. Most of us have at least one knee kind of raised. As long as there's no tension on that knee, you're still getting a good opener of that hip and side IT bend on that buttocks. And you just soften it or break it any way you need to. As I said before, I tend to spend part of this pose just letting the hips release to the degree they can before I forward bend. But if you're nice and open, just go into your forward bend and enjoy that hip and back stretch. I wish I were in class with you and could hear you, but I assume everybody's feeling something. There's nobody that's just going, why am I even doing this? I don't feel anything. Give yourself 4 or 5 more breaths. Just feel around in there. See what you're feeling. See if you feel more open than you did in the beginning, or if that sensation is kind of getting stronger. You'll know you probably went a little too deeply. As we repeat this pose over classes, you'll get better and better at sort of finding optimal right away, and just lean yourself out of it, and we're going to release those legs. A little windshield action might feel good about now. Knees side to side. And all that forward bending. I like this series very much, but it is a lot of forward bending. So we want to come to our bellies, give ourselves some, move the spine in a different direction in our Sphinx seal. So I always put a blanket under my hips. Since we're holding this, you don't want your hips digging into the floor. And just find your back bend. We really use the forearms as a way to just hold the back into its back bend. You don't have to look any certain way. Some people actually kind of clasp their hands together. Hands and feet aren't important. I usually tell people to find a kind of a position of least resistance for the feet. My feet tend to turn in a little bit when they're relaxed, so let yours do that. And then just begin to lengthen the spine by pulling the elbows back towards the waist a little bit. Yours might be quite low. You're still getting a back bend. And just find that sweet spot that feels good. I feel my back getting stimulated. Chest, you might feel it in the chest a little bit. Some people feel it in the belly a little bit. This is mainly about the vertebral column. Forcing it back. Keeping those little nodules out the spine from getting stuck. Very healthy for the spine to bend in both directions. You can bring your head into it. I actually almost always do a little bit of head motion here, just because I tend to carry a lot of tension in my neck. So this position seems to invite me to work that out a little bit. But you can just let it hang or find a comfortable gaze, let it be still. That's better for you. Maybe a couple more breaths. Of course, you all know you can come out of these poses earlier than I say. You sort of know when you've had enough if you're listening. And just let your elbows come out. Do as little as possible to release that spine. Let the chest come to the floor. Make a little pillow with your hands. And just mini shavasana. Just do nothing for a minute. Might feel a little nice stretch in the side of the neck if you're turning your head to one side. It's really just about letting go for a moment. We'll come up and we do a back bend one more time. Sometimes just repeating the same pose is what your back needs. That first one might have been hard, the second one might feel better. If your back's doing well, we call it seal when we straighten the arms. Come up a little higher. And really it's not about getting high, it's about changing the target that's getting stimulated in the spine. The Sphinx, you'll usually feel it upper back down to mid back. And this more straight armed one, you're gonna feel it more in the low back. So you don't want to pinch anything back there, but it's actually healthy for that to get back bent. We want to retain the natural curve in the lower back. And because a lot of us sit a lot, with the pelvis tilted back, we're all kind of in danger of losing that nice natural curve back there. So I do this pose pretty much every class because I think it's so important for our back. It also is almost the exact same pose that any physical therapist has people do who are suffering from back issues. It's just a dang healthy pose. So when you're ready, I'm just going to let yourself come out of it. Pillow hands, neck stretch. Other side, let everything go. And just feel that sensation in the back. Hopefully you can tell where you stimulated it. call that a rebound. That's actually a sign that you did something good for your back. So it's not like you should feel nothing. And we're going to finish with a twist. And since we're on our belly, we're just going to come into the twist from our belly. So depending on which way you're facing, roll onto one shoulder. I'm rolling onto my left shoulder, coming to my side body, bending the knee, the top knee, and just keep on twisting around. And you're going to end up in that very familiar, kind of like a reclined twist. We just got into it differently. The target area is the twist itself along the spine. You might feel it other places in the hip and knee and stuff, and you just move those body parts around till you get the kind of lever you need so that you're twisting the spine between the shoulder on the one side and the knee. Those are your levers. The spine is getting manipulated between those levers. There's really no requirement that you have to keep the shoulder down. For many people, the shoulder will come up, the knee will come up, and you're just trying to find a balance of a twist between those levers. The height of the knee, the angle of the knee, it's all pretty individual for getting your best twist. And come out of it, you just kind of let go, roll back onto the belly nice and slowly. Maybe hang out on the belly for a breath. And when you're ready, just roll to that other side for the knee down, bent knee, recline twist. And don't be at all shocked if you're not quite symmetrical side to side. Depending on our spine, our pelvis, the way we sit, we just may be different. We just kind of try to acknowledge it, and there we are. If you're getting a twist, that's what's perfect for you. We're going to roll on out of it when you're ready and basically make our way to our back for our Shavasana. So take a moment, give yourself a little knee squeeze, rock side to side, maybe move your legs around on your back. Listen to your body and see what it's telling you need. Because it's actually not that easy to just let everything go in full recline until you've sort of talked to those places. Sometimes it helps to put one leg full down and then breathe, and then the other leg. Many of you will just know exactly where you're going and you want to just go right to Shavasana. But all I'm saying is no requirement that you do it quickly or in any certain fashion. This is all about just letting it go. And Again, you will feel rebound. Those deep stretches, your body's gonna be accommodating those stretches. So don't be afraid of those little sensations. Some people feel very vulnerable, like the right side of my back doesn't feel normal, but make sure, unless it's painful, that you just kind of acknowledge that you've just done something very nice for it. And just let it be. It will find equilibrium. But it might not come immediately. Listen, you all, it was my pleasure. I feel so much better than when I started this class. I feel your energy. I hope it was good. I'm going to invite anyone to just stay where they are. You're in the safety of your own home. If you do need to end with me, just take your time, sit up, and we can namaste and hopefully go have a beautiful evening. Namaste.